يا أيها المزمل قم الليل إلا قليلا نصفه أو انقص منه قليلا أو زد عليه ورتل القرآن ترتيلا.
السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. الحمد لله حمدا كثيرا طيبا مباركا فيه، والصلاة والسلام على أشرف الأنبياء والمرسلين نبينا Muhammad وعلى آله وأصحابه أجمعين. Welcome back to our series on the fundamentals of Tajweed. This is our 8th episode. In the last episode we said, so we have discussed the Sifat al-Huruf, and we're just rounding it up. So we said we're going to discuss this time around alcolocola. And just to let us know, we mentioned 7 characteristics that are not paired. And many of the scholars in many of the books of Tajweed, they will mention qalqala as one of those 7, whereas we mentioned gunna. And that's because of the book that I have been following, but it's just for us to know that maybe if we check it elsewhere, it's likely that you will find qalqala instead of al-gunna. And al-gunna will also be discussed as a characteristic. Usually they say other characteristics. So it doesn't matter much, just for us to know. So what is al-qalqala? Firstly, in the Arabic language, the term al-qalqala refers to vibration. So a movement, a kind of vibratory movement. With regards to Tajweed, in the istilah of Tajweed, al-qalqala is defined as the bouncing or vibration of the articulation point when articulating the letter of qalqala, when this letter has a sukun. So al-qalqala it applies to letters when they have a sukun. So, and the effect of this vibration is that you have an echo, or what you can consider like an echo. So there is a small bouncing. So you articulate the letter and then it bounces at that articulation point because the letter has a sukun. So what are the letters of al-qalqala? So there are 5 letters, and the scholars put it in the phrase qutbu jad. Qutbu jad. So you have the qaf, the ta, the ba, the jim, and the dal. So now these letters of qalqala, why is it that they have qalqala? It's because they are very strong. These letters are very strong. They have strong characteristics. And the 2 characteristics that they typically have is that they are all letters of shidda. And what they do say is shidda, it is the imprisonment of the breath, of the sound, when the letter is being articulated. So, and what are the letters of shidda, if you remember, we said is ajit cotton bucket. So if you look at ajit cotton bucket, you see that all the letters of qutb jad are there, except for 3. Okay, and we will see what happened to those 3 letters. So number 1 is that the sound of the letter is completely imprisoned at the point of articulation. The second thing is that these letters of qalqala, again, they have a jar. The breath is also imprisoned at the point when you are stopping on the letter, and that's what happens in sukun when you stop on the letter. So for example, qaf, you say ak. So I've made a sound to come out, but in actual fact, you say ak. The breath is imprisoned, the sound is imprisoned. So you can't hear anything. And if these letters are not given qalqala, if somebody is reciting, you will not be able to appreciate exactly the letter they have pronounced when they stop on that letter, except maybe you know the word before or something like that. And so this is why the Arabs came with qalqala, and the Quran came with, qalqala, to make these letters to be very clear when they have a sukun. As for the letters of shidda that do not have qalqala, then they are the hamza, the kaf, and the ta. As for the kaf and the ta, the way they were dealt with is to give them hams. So you say at, because if you don't give it the hams, it will be at. And the kaf also, you give it hams, you say ak. So you let the breath come out. As for the hamza, then that has been left like that. And some of the Arabs also deal with it in other ways by turning it into a ya and things like that. So that's why we have the qalqala. And it is the bouncing of the sound. Okay? So how do we do this qalqala? And as in order to see how we do it, we'll just say, okay, so alcolocola is divided into, there are 3 levels, or sometimes they say 4, but we'll stop on 3 levels. There are 3 levels of alcolocola. So there is the alcolocola to sugra, walcolocola to wusta, walkubra. So the sugra is the smallest qalqala, the wusta is the middle, and the kubra is the highest level of qalqala. So what happens is when the letter that has a sukun, the letter of qalqala that has a sukun, is in the middle of a word, or is in the middle of the reading, you are not stopping on the word, then this will be the lowest level of qalqala. When the letter has a shadda, the letter of qalqala has a shadda and you are stopping on it, then this is the highest level of qalqala. And when it doesn't have a shadda, but you are stopping on it at the end of a word, and usually this is because you are stopping on that word. Most of the time the word actually has a haraka at the end, but when you stop at the end of a word, you give it a sukun. Then this will be al-qalqalatul wusta. So let's give an example. For as-sughra, so for example, you say yaqubalu. Yaqubalu. So the qaf here is in the middle. Is in the middle and it has a sukun. So you say yaqubalu. And for the ta, you say yatuba'u. Yatuba'u. And you have yabda. Yabda. So yabda. And for the jim, you have yajma'. Yajma'. So yajma'. So this is in the middle. And you have, for the dal, for example, you have la tadkhulu, la tadkhulu. So la tadkhulu. So it's important to let the tongue bounce when these letters are pronounced. So this will be the lowest level of qalqala, and this is al-qalqala to sughra. For al-wusta, then the example is, so the letter is at the end and you are stopping on it. So for example, you say fawaqu, fawaqu. So the level of qalqala here is a bit higher than when you say yaqubal. Fawaqu, as-siratu, as-siratu, al-bab, al-bab, azwaj. So these letters, obviously, they have haraka at the end, but because we are stopping on them, we are giving them sukun, and then the rule of qalqala will have to apply. Al-mihad, al-mihad. So this is al-qalqala to al-wusta, and then al-qalqala to al-kubra is when the letter at the end that we are stopping on is a letter of qalqala and it has a shadda. It has a shadda. So this again, it causes more emphasis. So for example, al-haqqu. So unlike fawaqu, this is now al-haqqu. There's a shadda, so naturally the qalqala is going to be stronger. Al-haqqu. Watab. Watab, al-hajj, al-hajj. So these are from the examples of alcolocola al-kubra. Now, how do we make the qalqala? There are two opinions as to the sound of the qalqala, and both of them are correct. So some of the reciters, they recite the qalqala such that the sound of the qalqala always lean towards the sound of a fatha. So al-bab, so regardless of what precedes it, always leans towards the sound of a fatha, and this is the more popular, and it's easier because you don't have to think. As for the second opinion, it is that it leans towards the sound of the haraka before it. So, for example, you say al-khuruju, al-khuruju. So you lean it towards the dhamma of the that came before it. So, but the more popular and the easier, because if it has a fatha before you think of making it lean towards fatha, if it has a kasra, so that's a bit more. So what is easier is to fix it, and that is what is more popular. And whichever one you choose to do, or you have a teacher that chooses to do, then that is fine. So this is the qalqala, and this is the end of the sifat. So just a quick recap of what we have done so far, from makharij al-huruf to sifat al-huruf. Just a few things. With regards to makharij al-huruf, we mentioned that we have the letters that come from the throat, huruf al-halqiyya, and those are 6. So hamza, a, ain, ha, and ghain, kha. So the bottom of the throat, the middle of the throat, and the top of the throat. So 6 letters from the throat. We have the 3 letters from the jawf. We have the 3 letters from the jawf, the alif of mad, the waw of mad, and the ya of mad. So we have those. And then we have 10 articulation points on the tongue. 10 different articulation points on the tongue. And this covers about 18 letters for the tongue. It covers 18 letters, and we'll come to that again later. But 10 articulation points on the tongue, the kaf and the qaf at the back of the tongue, and those are 2. You have the dod and the lam at the side of the tongue, the dod at the back and the lam in the front. And then you have the middle of the tongue, you have 1 articulation point for 3 letters, the shin, the jim, and the ya. Okay? And then at the tip of the tongue, we have a number of articulation points. You have the nun, you have the ra, and then we have the ta, the ta, and the dal. And we mentioned before, some of these letters are exactly the same as the English letters. The dal is like the D. There's really no difference. For example, the ta is not present in the English language, so we know the ta. It sounds very much like the English T, or the same T that we pronounce in most other languages. But I wanted to mention that there is a difference. It's not the same. The ta and the T in the English language, they are not exactly the same. They are very similar, but they are not the same. And it has an impact. It has an effect, which I did want to mention, but that skipped my mind. So the ta is a bit softer than the T. And it has an impact because when you pronounce the ta, and for the Arabs, I don't think this is a problem. For both majority of us, we have to learn this. And because we think it is exactly the same, we make this error. So when you are pronouncing the ta while reciting the Quran, we mentioned that the ta has hamza, hams, which is when you say, إِذَا الشَّمْسُ كُوِّرَتْ. So you release the breath. At the point of articulation of the ta with a sukun, you say kuwirat. It shouldn't be too hard, it shouldn't be too much. You say kuwirat. Okay, but this breath that comes out should not accompany the ta when it has a haraka. And this is very common, and it took, this is something we all have to learn. So the ta should not have a haraka. When it has a haraka, it should not have the hams. A bit of it may come out, but it should not be something that is much. And so, for example, you do not say tabarakalladhi, tabarakalladhi. So tabarakalladhi, rather it should be tabarakalladhi. And this is something that requires practice. It's not difficult, but it requires practice, and it requires paying attention to. So at the tip of the tongue, we have those letters, and then we have the dha, the dal, and the tha. And then we have the sin, the sod, and the za. And those are the letters of the tip of the tongue. And then we have, obviously, the letters of the lips. We have the fa together with the top two incisors. And then we have the ba, the mim, and the waw. And so that's with regards to the articulation point. So I wanted to just make a quick recap of that and bring to our attention the issue regarding the ta that we should try as much as possible to take note of. So we will stop here, inshallah, and in the next episode we will start some of the specific rulings regarding. So we have done the sifat now. These are as-sifatu al-asliya. These are the original and permanent characteristics of the letters that we've discussed. So all the other rules we'll be discussing fall under as-sifatu al-aradiyya, and these are the conditional characteristics based on the relationship of one letter to the another in the Quran. Subhanaka Allahumma bihamdik, ashhadu an la ilaha illa anta, astaghfiruka wa atubu ilayk.